Welcome all to Max's Mic. I'm Max and I have the mic, and today is the return of fantasy football on this channel. The football season right around the corner, and so I'm bringing back a lot of the fantasy football content that I had been doing last season, doing a little more. And so this is the very first episode of my fantasy football series for the 2025-26 NFL season. Today's episode, we've got a handful of quarterbacks as well as some running backs and wide receivers that I think you should either be drafting or you should be fading, as most teams are getting ready. Most leagues are getting ready to have their drafts soon. So I just have some players that you should be keeping an eye on as you get ready and prepare for your draft. Some name players that not many either people are thinking of or are just kind of up in the air, mostly up in the air. A lot of these guys are up in the air of, do I draft them? When do I draft them? Is this player going in a spot that I should consider taking them? So without ado, let's get right into it. We're opening up with Patrick Mahomes. And although he is a great quarterback and he's now fallen to be going significantly later, most drafts in leagues, especially around 10 teamers, we're looking at around the 5th or 6th round that he's going. And I think you should fade Mahomes. Yes, he's a great QB, but not for fantasy football. Last season, 11 QBs outscored them. 5 of them you can draft 2 to 3 rounds later than when you would be taking Mahomes. And it's simply just because he's not running for touchdowns as he normally would be. And with Isaiah Pacheco back and the foreseeable future being having him around for quite some time, it doesn't seem like Mahomes will really be producing quite a lot or as much as a lot of other quarterbacks will be. So I think for where he's going, I think you're better off drafting a skill position player, drafting a wide receiver or running back in that 5th round, continuing to stock up, maybe get a flex or extend your bench potentially as like a trade player potentially later in the season, and just be able to stock up instead of having drafted a QB when there are better options later. And one of those better options later is definitely Bo Nix. Definitely a guy that I'd be taking. Just last season, 29 touchdowns on only 12 interceptions, 3,700 yards. Also ran for 430 yards and 4 touchdowns. And now he's going to be having a better running back, which means a better run game can open up more passing possibilities. He's got a season under his belt, and he's also upgraded his receiving core heavily with the addition of Evan Ingram, a receiving tight end who should definitely help boost this offense. And I'm going to be talking about Evan Ingram a little bit later, more on Evan Ingram a little later, but I believe that Bo Nix is definitely going to elevate. I don't believe that he's going to be one of those quarterbacks that's going to fall victim of the sophomore slump, and I think he's going to continue to improve in this offense that should be getting better and is going to be one of the more sneaky competitive offenses. The third quarterback of 5 that I'm talking about, I got 5 QBs and then 3 RBs, 3 wide receivers, going with a nice short episode, just kind of getting right back into the swing of things, as during the season going to be doing a lot more fantasy football, a lot longer shows, as well as doing some daily fantasies for the Sundays. But sticking to today, we've got Jared Goff. And I think that you should fade Jared Goff. Last season, he was incredible. That is true. He did probably carry some of you guys in your leagues. However, last season, the Lions, they were first in total touchdowns. They were second in yards per play and second in passing yards per game. That is something that you just cannot simply expect this team to be able to produce. They were producing at such a high level offensively that you just cannot expect and bank on them to be able to do that again. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to continue to improve, which means that this run game is going to continue to grow, which is less points for Jared Goff. And I just find it hard to believe that he's going to continue to progress. He's not a runner, so he's not going to be running the ball. He's not going to be running it in for touchdowns. That's just not what he does. So you've just got to keep banking on the fact that he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns and throw a lot of passing yards, and that's just not a reliable way. So I think if you're getting him really late, maybe as an extra bench spot, but I think Goff is just one of the guys that you should just maybe pass on. If things worst comes to worst, you can maybe waiver wire him and just pick him up during certain matchups. But I believe that he's definitely a guy that you're going to want to steer clear from. Unlike another division rival in J.J. McCarthy. I think McCarthy is going to do better and should be someone you should draft. One, because of how late you can get him. You can get him towards the end of a lot of your drafts. We're looking at 10th round, even as late as the 10th round as you could potentially find him. And while a QB coming off of an injury with no experience in the league is not necessarily a situation that you should feel comfortable and trusting in, here's why JJ McCarthy is different. First of all, this Vikings offense has clearly proved after last season that almost anybody could potentially be able to be a successful quarterback. As we saw Sam Darnold completely flip and turn around his entire career last season. And I think that a lot of it has to do more with the tools around Darnold than Darnold himself. I think Darnold is a good quarterback who can be efficient and can play well, but I think that he's a system guy, and this was a great system. We're looking at the running back combination of Aaron Jones and now Jordan Mason, great backs, as well as Aaron Jones can catch the ball quite well. So there's your receiving option. You've got Justin Jefferson, my top receiver in the league. Some may say Jamar Chase is, but I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the league. And then you've got TJ Hawkinson, a top end tight end. And that's your top players who I believe you just simply need to get the ball in their hands and they're going to be able to do big things. Now, unlike Jared Goff, McCarthy has a little bit of a scramble factor to him. He's not going to be a crazy big runner like a Jaden Daniels. He's nowhere on that level, but I think he's going to run enough where Jaden Daniels was a bad example, but I think he's going to run enough where it's going to be totally worth it to have him on your team, and it's going to help boost his points. But again, from where you're going to be able to get him, you're better off taking a receiver earlier in the draft than a quarterback, and then coming back and getting getting JJ McCarthy later in the draft. And he will probably average around 17, 18 points, which is really nice from a quarterback. Now, your top end guys, they're putting up 20, and while you would like that, if you can get a guy consistently putting up 17, 18 points and be able to stack a team and a fantasy lineup around him, you can see yourself having a good chance at winning your league. Now, the last guy, as I might have accidentally alluded to, is Justin Fields, who I also think you should be drafting. Fields was solid in his last season with the 6 starts that he did have, 1,100 yards passing, running for nearly 300 yards. He had 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns with only 1 interception in the 6 starts. And it was really odd last season because many were surprised when Russell Wilson came back healthy, he all of a sudden became the starting guy over Justin Fields, who many couldn't really find much of an issue with. And I think that you're now going to plug him into this Jets offense, who I strongly believe Garrett Wilson is an upgrade to George Pickens. I believe that the running back, Breece Hall, I think Breece Hall is definitely better. And I think this Jets offense is definitely a lot better than what we saw last year. I think things were really odd and really off with Aaron Rodgers. And I think that this Jets offense can produce at a much higher level than they kind of showed last year. And I think that Justin Fields can definitely lead at that. He's going to be a guy that's going to run the ball. And again, you need a quarterback who's also going to run. You don't need necessarily the most mobile of backs, although the mobile backs are the ones that are going higher in your drafts. Your Jane Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar, and Jalen Hurts. They're going at the top of the draft because they run Hurts gets the touchdowns on the tush pushes. He's the goal line back almost for the Eagles, but your other guys are running the ball, and I think that Fields is going to be another guy for where he's going. Great value. Now let's move on to the running backs. We're going to start with the rookie Travion Henderson. Draft him. His stock suddenly rising, but here's the thing. New England takes him, and they already have 2 running backs, neither of which were able to hold the starting job last season and prove that they should be starting running backs. On the other hand, Henderson absolutely went off winning a natty last season. Yeah, he had Quinshon Judkins and the 2 of them, plus that absolutely just brutally stacked Ohio State team. But Henderson in his own right is an incredible back and is going to do great things. And now on top of that, you've got the fact that his very first touch of the ball in the NFL, granted it's preseason, but nonetheless, a 100-yard kick return. And in the first 2 games of preseason, he had 5 carries for 38 yards. That's 7.6 yards per carry. A great runner. He can power through defenders. He's also got a little shiftiness to him. He is going to be the lead back in this suddenly rising New England offense that I think is going to be quite good. And I think he can catch the ball, and I think he's going to get some good amount of targets too, which is only going to increase his versatility and his value. A running back that you should not be drafting. Do not, whatever you do, no matter how tempting it may seem, do not consider touching Travis Etienne Jr. Do not draft him. Not only has his numbers plummeted, but they've seemingly fell off a cliff. Etienne, his first 2 seasons in the league, averaged a little over 1,000 rushing yards. Last year, he ran for only 558 yards. He averaged around 240 carries his first 2 seasons combined. Excuse me, not combined. His average for his first 2 seasons were 240 yards. This past season, he only ran for 150 carries. He only had 150 carries. 2 touchdowns last season compared to the 11 that he had prior. On top of that, you've got Tank Bigsby, who he was already split in time with last year, and Jacksonville drafted 2 running backs, Bashal Tutin and LaQuint Allen Jr. 2 tough names to pronounce. I think I got them right. I hope so. But so with all of this factored in, the fact that Jacksonville went out and they didn't draft just 1 running back, they got 2 running backs in this last year's class that also did have a really deep running back class. It was a really good running back class this past year. But the fact that they went and got 2 guys is clear that even with the new head coach, Liam Cohen, coming in, there is great expectation that it is time to move on from Travis Etienne Jr. Finally, the last running back I'm going to talk about today is Tony Pollard. Draft Tony Pollard. 1,079 yards, 5 touchdowns last season. He also had 41 receptions for 238 yards. However, that's with splitting time with Tajay Spears. This season, Spears is going to be starting the year hurt, and the other backups are seemingly nowhere to be found. They are not on the level or consideration to be coming close to touching the reps that Tony Pollard will be getting. So he will be the bona fide 1 running back with some other guys. I think Kalel Mullings out of Michigan is there, and I think they've got another guy that they've been sitting on for a few years now, but neither of them will be competing for action on the field with Tony Pollard. It'll be him. He's the number 1 guy, and in an offense where you've got a new rookie quarterback in Cameron Ward and some interesting moving parts with the wide receiver, I think we could see Tony Pollard leaned on heavily in the run game, obviously, and the run game lean on heavily to produce offensively for the Titans. But I also think that he can get some good usage in the passing game as well, which will only help increase his numbers. Now, moving on, we're going to move on to the running backs. Excuse me, not the running backs, the wide receivers. That was the running backs. So Henderson draft, Etienne fade, Tony Pollard, I'm saying draft. Now, give me a second, let me adjust myself. We are going to be moving on to the wide receivers. We're going to start with Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers and this Raiders offense is really interesting. We got to see what Brock Bowers can do, and I think that he will continue to improve. But this Raiders offense is all of a sudden now showing some really good potential, and I really like taking almost anyone out of this offense. Specifically, I like Brock Bowers. I like Ashton Genty. He's going to be the bell cow. He's going to really dominate. But I also like the wide receivers in Jakobi Meyers and Jack Bash, being a late round kind of guy that you can get. But we're going to stick with Jakobi Meyers, who's definitely the number 1 receiver in an offense that now has Geno Smith at the quarterback. And Geno, a massive improvement and upgrade to whatever the quarterback play was last year. And so because of that, and because of the fact that they're now going to have a run game, they're now going to have Brock Bowers, which I don't think is really going to hamper the target share that Jakobi Meyers is going to get. If anything, he could potentially help Meyers get more targets and more receptions because a lot of the attention is going to be drawn towards Brock Bowers. So because of that, I think Jakobi Meyers is definitely going to be a guy you want to take, especially because he's going rounds. We're looking at what, round 4, round 5, a solid wide receiver one going there. Next guy, I'm talking about Chris Olave. Fade, do not draft Chris Olave. Why? Well, because there's a lot of confusion. The Saints in general are just an absolute mess. Their quarterback situation is a disaster. You've got Spencer Rattler, who I guess you could try to develop, but they've decided not to, and they've gone with Tyler Shuck, who I also don't think, one, is going to be all that good, and two, is just really confusing that you've got a guy in Rattler who you tried to give a chance last season, and now all of a sudden you're just going and you're getting Shuck, who's also not that good. I believe he's like one of the oldest guys to be drafted almost. He's got to be up there. It's just a really strange situation, and I think that Olave, while being the number one, there's definitely some injury concerns with him, and I definitely just don't feel comfortable. I think Kamara, you maybe want to draft, but other than that, I'm steering kind of clear of a lot of these Saints guys, including Olave. The final wide receiver I'm talking about, I'm going with Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall in this Niners offense that I believe just traded for Brian Robinson. So now you've got CMC, Brian Robinson, Isaac Guerrero at the running backs. But when it comes to wide receivers, you've got nobody. You've got Ayuk, who's already hurt, Jawan Jennings, who the reports are is he's hurt and could potentially miss some time. Then you got they just went and got Sky Moore. Or you could be a good fantasy football manager, and in your 6th round or 5th, 6th, 7th-ish area, instead of drafting Patrick Mahomes, you go and you get Ricky Pearsall, who's probably going to be the number one wide receiver, probably going to be 1 or 2 in target share to George Kittle, either slightly ahead or slightly behind, but still racking in close to, if not right at, double-digit target share, and has spent the entirety, and this has been big news coming from the Niners, and a lot that the media has kind of talked about and discussed quite a bit, is Pearsall has spent this entire offseason training with Brock Purdy. So the chemistry is definitely going to be improved and be there. And again, he went from last season being a rookie, then getting shot, then recovering to the point of significant relevancy. Pretty sure he had he had 3 games last season of 17 or more points, which the fact that he was shot and able to recover and be good enough to just simply play NFL football is incredible within itself. And then to be able to actually be efficient, effective, and now he's going to be even better with even better chemistry with his quarterback. The upside is astronomical, and he should definitely be a guy you should take. Finally, we've got 3 tight ends. Again, as I already mentioned earlier, I'm going to be talking about Evan Ingram. This guy, I'm going to put my money down now. You've heard it here first. He will, without a shadow of a doubt, be the steal of the draft as someone you could take potentially in the 7th round, depending on how deep your league is. But again, 5th round, 6th, 7th round area. I believe that he's not only going to be the steal, but could potentially be the top tight end in the league this season, in which he's now on a Broncos team with Bo Nix, a strong, really good up-and-coming quarterback. You've got Cortland Sutton is the only guy going to be getting more targets than him as a receiving tight end. I believe that he's going to elevate this Broncos offense, and I think the Broncos offense is going to elevate him back into the spotlight. I think big things are to come from Evan Ingram. Next, I've got my second to last player, Mark Andrews. Do not draft Mark Andrews. Yes, while he seems to be Lamar's favorite target in this Ravens offense, it just feels like there's too many mouths for Lamar to feed. He's got Derrick Henry at the running back, but then he's got Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely at the tight ends. The wide receivers are Zay Flowers, who I was a Zay Flowers fantasy manager last year, and I did not enjoy my time as it really was just up and down. It was really annoying seeing guys like Rashad Bateman and Nelson Agholor getting a lot of touchdowns and targets and downfield balls that I think Zay Flowers easily could have made plays on. Again, you've got Rashad Bateman still there. No more Nelson Agholor, but you do have D-Hop. And then, of course, Lamar wants to feed his own mouth and feed himself and go out and run for touchdowns and do all of that. And so because of that, and because of the fact that he had 6 games of 15 or more points last year, but he also had 7 games in which he scored less than 10, including 2 games of 0 points. And no, those zeros were not because he didn't play. He had 1 target in both of those games. The fact that last season was just an absolute dumpster fire and Isaiah Likely last year starting to prove that he can be, and honestly, not only proving that he can handle the production and be able to pick up the production that Mark Andrews was doing, but also the fact that he showed that really almost any tight end, any NFL caliber tight end can really fit into this system quite well. Just shows that I think it's not going to be a Mark Andrews season again, and I don't think that he's going to be worth drafting. Finally, my last guy, Cade Otton. Now, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is really quite interesting because when you look at it, the offense is just absolutely stacked. You've got Bucky Irving and Rashad White at the running backs. Baker Mayfield is the quarterback. And your wide receivers are Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, who started to really make a name for himself towards the end of last season, and Emeka Ibuka, who they just drafted in the first round. So you may be thinking, how does Cade Otton fit into this? Well, Cade Otton now going into his fourth season, his prior 3 seasons, there has been a steady increase to his production and his stats, both or all 3 of total receiving yards as well as his receptions and his target share have all been steadily increasing over the 3 years. And I believe that this will continue as not only is Chris Godwin out missing a couple of weeks and potentially even when he comes back not going to be getting the same target share and the same amount of on-field playing time and reps that he normally would get, but also Jalen McMillan is now out, which has left Emeka Ibuka to be the number 2 receiver, but has left room for Cade Otton as the third guy to really step up. And after him, you've got guys like Tez Johnson, who's going to get his reps, and Sterling Shepard, but there's really no one else that's going to be contesting as the third best receiver, or say just catching player on this team. I think that Bucky Irving could see some targets and potentially even Rashad White. But I think when it comes down to it, it's going to be Mike Evans, it'll be Emeka Ibuka, and then I think Cade Otton's going to, again, see a further increase in his target share. And I just like Otton in these short routes, close to the goal line, potentially big guy that can just muscle his way in, and I believe that he's going to continue to see his numbers increase and be really worth it, really efficient, especially early in this season. So those are my takes. Again, a quick run through it for the quarterbacks. I'm fading Mahomes. I'm drafting Bo Nix, fading Jared Goff, drafting J.J. McCarthy and Justin Fields. Henderson and Tony Pollard, Travion Henderson, Tony Pollard, I'm drafting, fading Travis Etienne. For the wide receivers, I'm drafting Ricky Pearsall and Jacoby Myers. I'm fading Chris Olave. And for the tight ends, drafting Evan Ingram, drafting Cade Otton, and I'm fading Mark Andrews. If you enjoyed and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. I will definitely be bringing more content. Hit the subscribe and get excited. Get ready. Football season right around the corner. College football season coming around too. Going to be making some content with that. So stay tuned. But until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care and goodbye.